Hey everybody, Melon here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a teardown guide for the VAXEE NP-01s. Now, before we get started, I want to mention a couple things. This is a very difficult to service mouse. I would not recommend taking this unit apart unless you absolutely have to and you know what you're doing. Secondly, opening this unit up will void your manufacturer warranty, so only open this up if you are outside of the 1-year manufacturer warranty through VAXEE. Now, in terms of repairing parts for this mouse is actually fairly modular, which is nice to see, but it is very difficult to take apart. So again, just be very careful when you do disassemble it. Anyways, that's pretty much it for precursors. Let's go ahead and get right into it. All right, now the first thing you're gonna have to do to take apart the NP-01s is remove the stock skates. Now I've already removed mine because I really didn't like the stock skates, so I put on these X-ray pad obsidian dots, but you only need to remove the bottom one, and there is this very handy little removal rail right here. So if you do need to remove the skates, it's very easy to do so. You don't need to remove the top ones, you only need to remove the bottom ones, and basically you just need to take out these two 6-tier star screws down here on the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and take those out. The easiest way I found to get the base off is actually just to put a little pressure on the sides of the mouse from here to here. If you put a little pressure, you'll notice that the back of the mouse will kind of pop like that. Now, if it doesn't pop, you can take your finger or your fingernail or just like a pry bar and just run it around the side to remove the clips. But I found that just putting a little pressure here just pops the back off quite easily. Now, what happens is once you pop this off and you can kind of get a little leverage under here, you can pull that off. Now, the next step is going to be the front here. So this is actually anchored into the shell by two little prongs here. So what you want to do is you want to pull up from the back of the mouse and pull from the front and just kind of shimmy it off. And you can see the two little prongs at the front there. Now, this is one thing you have to be very careful of. Do not rip this off because as you can see, there are a bunch of ribbon cables on the inside that you will need to remove first. So be very, very careful when pulling this off. Don't put too much pressure on it. So next up, you're going to have to remove all these ribbon cables. Now, you can do this in pretty much any order or whatever it's easiest for you to get. Just be sure to be very careful when taking it apart. Now, when you're touching these ribbon cables, make sure not to pry on them too much because they are very sensitive. So I'd like to grab them by the side and just kind of slowly wiggle them out. Just very carefully, just make sure you don't damage them. Just a little bit of wiggle and it should pop right off. So that's one. Next up, we'll do the battery connector. Now the battery connector is a standard tri-tip connector, so you can just kind of take this with the sides of your fingernails and just kind of pull this off. It comes out very easily. So next up you want to do is this here. Just again, same process as wiggle side to side, pull off. And then this is the back connector here is for the top LEDs on the top of the shell here. Sorry, okay, there goes. Sorry, my camera kept on focusing. So that's how you take that off. So again, just be very, very, very careful with these ribbon cables. They are very sensitive. Alrighty, so now you're left with the bottom of the NP-01s. Now, there really isn't anything here that you're most likely going to need to service yourself, but I'll show you how to take it apart regardless. So first off, we're going to start by removing the 4 screws holding down the PCB right here. Now that you've taken the screws off, getting this off is pretty straightforward. So what you want to do is, because the PCB is anchored into the front of the mouse by this little connector right here, all you do is just kind of hold your finger towards the back and just pull up, and that should release it right off. Pull up from the front and just pull from the back, and the entire piece comes off like this. Now, these little pieces here will probably come off. These are little funnels for the LEDs that show up on the bottom of the mouse itself. So those are going to be the corresponding LEDs in the bottom here. If they come off, just put them onto these little things here. So I'll show you where this goes. Oop. Well, there you go. We're going to since I dropped it, we're going to show you how to take everything apart then. These guys go onto these little buttons here. So basically you just kind of put this and it just sits onto here like this. Now, as you saw, the bottom buttons did come off. You can service these yourself if you really wanted to. These just pop back onto their little holders on the base here. They're very easy to take on and off, which is nice to see. Now, one thing you will notice is that the power button does have a habit of just falling off quite frequently. So the power button goes into this little rocker right here. Basically, all you have to do in terms of making sure this is going to be working properly is you want to put this into the slider, where if this little slider is down, it is off. That's pretty much the only note you have to make about that. So that is the base. Again, very straightforward. A couple of these pieces will fall off, but don't worry about that. They're very easy to put back into place. Alrighty, now this is where this gets very complicated. So the base here is probably the hardest part of this mouse to disassemble by a whole. What makes it very difficult is all these ribbon cables. So what I would recommend is getting some Scotch tape and taping down these connectors somewhere outside of the mouse shell, just not anywhere where they're going to be, like, don't bend them out of place, obviously, but just putting a little bit of tape just to keep them out of your hair while you disassemble the mouse is a very good idea, because these do get in the way a lot and they're very annoying to deal with. So in terms of disassembly, now you will notice that there's a lot of screws in the inside of this unit. So there is one screw here, there's 4 here, and there's 1 in here and here. So we have to remove all of these to take this apart. First off, we're going to remove these 2 on the corner here. Now that these 2 are gone, now you can remove the ones on the bottom here. Now these are holding in the main clicks, so you have to be very careful with these. So don't try and pull the main clicks out yet. Take out all the screws and then we'll go through how to remove them. All right, so now you've taken off the 4 screws that are anchoring the main clicks. The easiest way to take out the main clicks is to go flip the mouse over and put a little bit of pressure right here and here. Now you should feel the clicks actually come loose once that happens. So once they come loose, if you look on the inside, you'll see that it's off its little holder here. So you can actually just take and just slide the click right out of the mouse very easily. Now, one thing to note, that on this side of the mouse, because this ribbon cable is so close to the click, there can be a little interference here. Be very, very, very careful trying to take this click out. Basically, if you can't get it out, just put a little more pressure towards the bottom until you feel it come loose. Now you don't want to ream on these clicks, like you don't want to force them out. If you need to, take a screwdriver and just put a little pressure underneath just to release them. And once that's done, you should be able just to pull the click right out of the main shell. Again, be very, very, very careful taking these out. If you put too much pressure on the clicks, you will ruin the stabilizers and you can actually break them out. So be very careful. These should just naturally slide out. You should have to put very little pressure to take these out. Now that the main clicks are out, we have one more step we have to do on the other side of the mouse. We are going to have to remove this screw right here in the center of the shell here. Now that that is out, now we can flip the mouse over, and at the front of the mouse, you'll see that there is a screw here and a screw here. So we're going to go ahead and remove both of these. Now, at this point, if you did tape your cables down, it'd be a great idea to go ahead and remove the Scotch tape from those cables. Now, in terms of removing this central piece from the rest of the shell, the easiest way to do this is once you've taken off these 2 screws at the front here, just take 2 of your fingers and put a little bit of pressure here and push into the mouse itself. Now, you will hear a click on the inside of this popping off. It's okay. If this doesn't come off for whatever reason, make sure you've undone these screws here, and the central screw down at the bottom we took out earlier. This should just pop out with no issue at all. So go ahead, just put a little pressure and you should see it pop out. And the central part of this will just pop out right of the shell, just like that. You can put that to the side. Now, you will probably notice that this little piece is going to come loose. Now, this is the top LEDs on the top of the mouse that goes right here. This just kind of sits in here and it's very loose and it just comes off very, very easily. So if this comes off, don't worry about it. It's okay. Just put it to the side. You'll need it later. Now, in terms of the top shell itself, there's really nothing else you need to remove here. If you do need to remove the side buttons, they're kind of difficult to get out. Basically, what you have to do is you have to force them into the shell, and then once they're in, you kind of grab from the bottom and pull up, and with a little bit of pressure you can take the side clicks out, but they just kind of sit into this little natural holder here. Now there is another one of these little rubber stoppers here for lights to go through. This probably won't come off during your repair, but if it does come off, it just goes onto the bottom like that. All right, now for this main central kind of piece here, there are 2 pieces we're going to have to remove from here. The first one is the main click and the scroll wheel area, and the second one is going to be this little daughter board for the side clicks. Now, in order to remove the main clicks, you just have to remove these 2 little screws up at the top right here and here. Now, once those screws are removed, all you have to do is just basically take this and pull it up and pull it out, and the entire piece comes off. It's very easy to remove. One thing though, be very, very careful. You make sure you pull this up and out. Don't pull it forward because the scroll wheel is resting inside its little holder here. If you pull it forward, you could damage the scroll wheel, so just be very careful about that. Now, if you do have issues with your main clicks or your scroll wheels not working, check this ribbon cable, because if the ribbon cable's in sideways or it's not fully connected, you could have issues with this not working properly. So that's one very easy thing to check to diagnose a potential problem. But aside from that's pretty much all you need to do to remove the scroll wheel and the main clicks. All right, and last up is going to be this little sideboard for the side clicks. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to take this ribbon cable, just take the edge of your screwdriver and just put it underneath and just pull up, and it will pull the ribbon cable out of the bottom, nice and easy. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take this ribbon cable, fold it over, and just hold it down on the bottom of the shell like this, and that will reveal a little screw right at the top here. Then you can just go ahead and take that off. Now that's taken off, you can let go of the ribbon cable, and this entire piece just pulls right out of the top. There's nothing else holding it in, it's just anchored in by that top screw, and then you're left with a little daughter board for these side clicks. All right, now the last thing that's part of this little central shell is the battery. This battery is just held in by a little bit of adhesive on the bottom here, and it is held in by a little clamp here. Now I'm not going to remove the battery just because it's a little difficult to get back in, and if you remove this foam, it does rattle around a little bit. But if you do need to replace the battery, I'll just take off this foam, take off the clip, and then just put in the new battery. I believe this is a 400 milliamp battery if my memory serves me correctly, but it may be a different kind. But just keep in mind that unlike other mice, this does have a dimensional limit for what kind of battery you can put in this. So make sure you get the proper sized battery if you are going to replace your battery in the future, because a battery that's too big may not work properly. If you can go for a smaller battery, but it may not fit the clips properly. So just keep that in mind if you do end up replacing a battery in the near future. All right, let's get started with the reassembly process. So first off, we're going to do the side clicks. Now the side clicks just kind of naturally fall into this little anchor here. So all you have to do is take the side clicks. You can see how there's this little soldering point at the bottom. Those will naturally line up with these two little holes here. So all you do is just slide it in, and it will just naturally slide into its little holder right there. Now, once that's in place, you want to take one of these larger flathead screws that we got earlier, take this and then put that on the end of your screwdriver. Take the ribbon cable for the side buttons and just gently fold it back like this. Make sure not to crease the cable. And then you're going to put this screw right on this little standoff right here. And then you have your side buttons put back into place. Now you shouldn't feel any flexing on this one, so you can just kind of put your thumb on it and move it around, but everything should work okay. Don't pull the ribbon cable because you could potentially pull it out of place. Now the last thing you have to do is take the end of this ribbon cable and just gently feed it into the base of the mouse and just pull it out from the top like this. It should naturally go in between these two little rounded pillars here like that. Next up, we're going to do the main clicks. Now there's a couple note things about this one. The biggest thing you have to note is that this scroll wheel here, you have to make sure that this scroll wheel lines up with the standoffs right here and here. That's the trickiest part of this entire part. So what you do, again, make sure before you put it in, make sure your ribbon cables are fully seated properly just to make sure you don't have any problems. Run your ribbon cable through the bottom of the mouse right here. It should just fit naturally into this little open area. Should like that. Sometimes you have to pull it through. And then once you get the PCB into this point like this, you want to flip it over and basically just eyeball line up the scroll wheel with its standoffs. And once you have it lined up, it will just naturally fall into its own little area. Now it's actually held in by these little plastic railings here. You actually just kind of, you don't have to hold it in place. It just kind of naturally holds itself there. Now, next up, you're going to want to take two more of these larger surface area screws that we used earlier. Take those and you're going to screw them in right here and right here on the front. Now, again, be very careful with this. Now, what I like to do is screw this one in halfway, grab myself the other screw, and then just gently put this one in. Now, the reason why I do this is because if you over tighten one side of the screw and not the other side, it could potentially cause the entire board to tilt a little bit, which can be a bit of an issue specifically because these are the main clicks. So you want to make sure you don't do that. So just gently screw these in, like just do a couple twists on both sides until you feel them hit the bottom. Now again, don't over tighten. Once you feel the screw hit the bottom, don't tighten it any further. And once you do that, you should have it done. Now you can just kind of take your thumb and just hold onto the side of the click and make sure it's anchored properly. It shouldn't wobble at all. Make sure your scroll wheel turns, make sure your scroll wheel can still click. Just double check all those things before you finalize this part. All right, now in terms of this little central part here, so this part is super loose and it just comes apart like constantly, which is really annoying. So in order to reassemble this, basically you kind of have to just hold the back of the shell and just pray it doesn't come out, which it does very easily. What I've actually found really does help is taking a little bit of tape and just kind of taping down this central part here. So just putting it into place, make sure it lines up with that little ring in the middle, and then just putting a piece of tape over it just to hold it in place. Now this just prevents it from moving around during the reinstallation because this comes out constantly when you're trying to put this back into this. So this just makes your life a lot easier. Yeah, it's ugly as hell, but it does the job. It's going to save you a lot of time in the future. Now, in terms of getting this back into this, basically what you do is you want to take these two standoffs at the front of this mouse and you want to line them up with these two little standoffs here. The best way to do that, you're going to take this in and just put it in on an angle. So now what you want to do is line this up, get this in there, make sure your scroll wheel is aligned properly. And then once it's in there, you can go ahead and push on the bottom. You should hear a click. There you go. And that means that it is in place. Now make sure your scroll wheel still actuates before you screw everything else in, and make sure your side buttons actuate, but everything should feel good. Now, if you didn't tape down this little central wire, be sure to give us a little tug just to make sure it didn't come loose, but it should hopefully stay in place. Now, first thing we're going to do here is we're going to retape down all these ribbon connectors just to make our lives easier. Now that we have everything taped down, what we're going to want to do is we're going to go ahead and take the big central screw we took out before. So that's going to be this guy right here. We're going to take him and we're going to put him right down in the center here, right in the middle of this, right in that little hole right there. So what this does is this anchors this entire piece inside the mouse itself. Now, next up, you're going to take these two screws that we took from here and here. We're going to go put those back in as well. So now that that is anchored in, we're going to go flip this over and we're going to put two screws at the front of the mouse here. Now, next up, we have the main clicks. Now, these are fairly straightforward. They're just a little finicky sometimes. So basically what you do is you're going to take the end of the main click and feed it into the bottom of the shell through here. Now, be very, very, very careful with this one because this does meet with the bottom of the ribbon cable here. So you have to be very careful when you put this in. If you don't tie this down, you could potentially put this over the ribbon cable. So be very careful with that. So you're going to go ahead and insert it at the bottom here. Try and keep it as close to the top as you can. And it's going to go into the base here, just kind of wiggle it around. And once it's roughly in place, you can reach in with your finger and push down and you'll hear a click and that will anchor the click into the spot. You can do the exact same process with this one. Again, very, very easy on this side because you don't have to worry about the ribbon cable. It's much easier to do. And just once they're in place, just push down and they will go into place. Now, next up, we're going to go ahead and anchor these back down again. So you're going to go ahead and grab 4 screws. Now those are all back into place, you can go ahead and remove the masking tape that was holding down your ribbon cables. Again, just be very careful when you do so. Now at this point, it'd be a good idea to make sure your main clicks are still functioning. So go ahead and make sure check all your buttons are working. Just make sure that everything's working properly, scroll wheel actuating properly. Just make sure everything is working properly before you seal this back up. Now, next thing we have to do is we're going to have to go ahead and attach this to the base of the unit. Alrighty, now in terms of getting the PCB back into the shell, this is fairly straightforward. There is one thing you need to worry about though. So right here on the bottom, there is a little on and off switch that toggles the mouse on and off. You want to make sure this is in the off position. And then on the bottom of the shell, you want to make sure that this little slider is set to off. You do not want it to be on, make sure it is set to off. The reason for that is that if you try and put this onto this and this little plastic connector isn't lined up with this little slider here, it will break and you will not be able to use the mouse anymore. So be very, very, very careful of that. Make sure it's set to off. Make sure on the base of the mouse, this is also set to off. Okay. Now, after that, what you want to do is you want to take the front of the PCB, the USB-C side, and you want to just kind of slide it into this little holder towards the front. Now, you'll feel this like kind of go in a little more. And then once that's set, you just basically just sit it down and it will just naturally just kind of rest itself on the board itself. Now, if this does not naturally sit down, do not force it down. Double check your rocker to make sure it's working properly, it's in the proper position. Again, just don't force anything down ever with this. Now, next up, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and replace the screws that were on the bottom of our motherboard here. So now that you've applied the screws onto the bottom, what I recommend doing is going on the bottom and making sure that all these buttons still actuate. So just make sure they all are still functioning, specifically the power switch. Make sure you're feeling a actuation on all these just to make sure they're all leveled properly. And then once that's done, you are good to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the top of the mouse and apply it to the bottom of the mouse. Now this is probably the hardest part of this entire repair just because all these ribbon cables are just everywhere and it makes this very, very difficult. So I'm going to try to do my best to show you how everything works. But basically what happens is that this little ribbon cable towards the back is going to go onto this connector right here. This big central one is going to go here. The little rocky one here for this one that keeps running everywhere is going to go here, and your battery connector is going to go here. Now, what I found the best to do is to start with the back. So this is going to naturally slide into this back connector. All right, there's one. All right, next up, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take the middle one and put that in. So that's just going to slide naturally into here. Now, again, make sure these are all connected evenly. If they're misconnected, you will have issues with the mouse not working properly. Now, you're probably going to have to fish this one out from the bottom because it loves to get tangled and everything else, but that's okay. There we go. That's that. All right, so then we're going to put this one into this connector here. Perfect. And last but not least, we have the battery connector, which is going to go right here, and it should just naturally plug in. Now what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to gently push this together. You're going to want to see these two little prongs towards the top of the mouse. You're going to want to go ahead and line this up with the top, and you're just going to want to put some pressure on the back and gently slide this in, and then done. And you are all set. Now at this point, don't screw the bottom in yet. I would turn this mouse on. I would connect it to your computer and make sure all the buttons are working. So test the side buttons, test this main clicks, test the scroll wheel, test everything before you put it together. If something isn't working properly, 95% of the time, it's probably because one of the ribbon cables on the inside isn't fully connected. So just make sure those are all seated properly. I know it's very hard to get them in, but just make sure they're seated properly. But once everything is done, you should be good to go. Now, if everything tested, everything is working totally fine, turn the mouse off, go ahead and grab the two base screws that were initially holding your unit together and screw those into the bottom here. Now, just to make sure, do a quick check across the entire mouse just to make sure you didn't miss anything, but everything should be okay. And there you go. You have successfully disassembled and reassembled your VAXEE NP-01s. Thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys want to see more teardown videos like this, be sure to let me know. I will be doing more of these with all my future reviews across the channel, so I'll be probably breaking a lot more mice, but at least I'll be showing you guys how to take them apart. So anyways, thank you very much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you guys do want to see a full review of this mouse, I do have that up on my YouTube channel. You can go check that out if you're interested. And I will see you guys in the next teardown video. Peace.